Kyle here from All Media Reviews, Vinyl A to Z. I think this is number 26, Vinyl Collection Video 86. I'm going to start doing the R's, but I forgot one in the Q's. There's one more Queensryche single, Screaming in Digital. It's called Speaking in Digital. It was like a conversation. It was an interview. Not that big of a deal, but it's just worth showing, I guess. Came out in, I don't know what year. Probably sometime late 80s, early 90s from Sharon Wise. Rage for Order. Of course, Screaming in Digital is the song from Rage for Order, but there's some clips, Dreaming Infrared, so maybe this was earlier. 86, yeah, it was actually. So this is before Operation Mindcrime had come out, but anyway. So on with the R's. So this is the first part of the R's. It's going to be, I'd estimate it's going to be at least 3 videos. So, alright, the first one, I have 2 records from this artist. This is the band Radical Face. It's Florida musician, I think multi-instrumental singer, songwriter, composer, Ben Cooper. Among his other projects, he had a project called like Electric President, and then he had a project about 10 years ago that I loved that was just a digital release called Clone with just C-L-O-N-E. It was just released online. Absolutely adore it. If they ever released that on vinyl, I'd buy it. But this is his primary, most successful band called Radical Face. And it's like chamber rock, chamber folk, a lot of conceptual. This is Ghost. This is his most well-known. Came out in 2007. It had him signed, as you can see. I saw Radical Face play live once at the Varsity Theater many years ago. And then this is the Branches album. He did more than one version, one album in the Branches series. I know people compare the Deer Hunter to the guys from Velocities in Music, I think, to Radical Face, or vice versa. I can see it to an extent, because he uses like trumpet and violin and some other stuff, and a lot of dynamics and some character-driven vocals at times. But I mean, some of it is a little bit like Mumford & Sons, which I was a fan of Mumford & Sons for like a month, and then I kind of jumped ship. But because it's folk rock, you could say. At its heart, it's still folk rock, but it uses a lot of different kinds of instrumentation and dynamics and makes it really good. Midlake's a little bit like that too, although Midlake have a more overt classic rock influence, that you could say, or classic pop, whatever. So moving on, that's Radical Face. Then I have 3 records, the only 3 records of this particular artist, who I'm a pretty big fan of, and it's something related just came out about the primary band. But this is Ramona Falls, the debut album, which came out in 2009. Brent Knopf from Phenomena, before he left Phenomena, he released this album, Into It, which I know it was out of print, or it was like really expensive, and then it came back, and I ended up buying. I don't know if I got him to sign this. I know it was a big deal when I got this. The thing about this record is I enjoy every track, but there's not too many just some tracks that are better than others. This one has that song that I always reference, Always Right. It just repeats over, and it's got some sort of ragtimey, funny parts, a little bit like Brian Scary, actually. But I mean, Electric, I Say Fever, a lot of piano-driven stuff. If you know Phenomena, you know the songs that Brent wrote Phenomena, he was the primary writer. It's not that different. I mean, it's different, but not that different. Salt Sack, Clover, Russia's terrific. The dynamics are great. So, yeah, I mean, you could say at its heart it's like piano-driven rock, but it's proggy at points. A lot of dynamics, a lot of vocal work. So then that was 2009. Then 2012 he put out the second record. After he'd left Phenomena, decided he wanted to focus on Ramona Falls full-time, Brent Knopf. And this is Prophet, which there's some really just excellent songs on this. One specific, maybe the best song he ever wrote. It's called, of course I can't, Spore. It was a single, the first single. It's such a perfect song. It's one of the 10 best songs of the 2010s, for sure. This thing, like the CD, I have multiple versions of the CD, and it opens up differently, of course. But you can see he signed it, thank you. I saw Ramona Falls at least 2, maybe 3 times, but, I really would love to see him have success with this project. He did a thing called Ilvi with one of the guys from The National, which probably got more success. But because he's a really talented singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, Brent Knopf. But but this is a terrific record. I mean, it was in my top back in 2012. It was in my top 10 records most of the year, if I recall. Proof, Squirm was one. I know there was more guitar on this from my memory compared to the debut Into It. There's some more experimental stuff, but like I said, when the best stuff on here is better than anything actually on Into It, the debut. But it's both records I like. I mean, I see both records about equal. So then that was 2012. Then the most recent record he released by Ramona Falls is this one. It's called Collis. It's a weird title. Something. I think it's Collis or Coils rather, not Collis. It was cryptic. He put out some trailer that was all this animated stuff, and he has like an engineering degree from Dartmouth. So that's why a lot of the animation and stuff that came into Menomana's music and the artwork and everything was also involved with some of the Ramona Falls stuff. I think this was 2017, it might have been 2018. It was one of those 2 years. And I gotta be honest, I didn't get into this record nearly as much. I listened to it 4 or 5 times probably. I pre-ordered the vinyl like I got this. I probably need to revisit it. It's been 5, 6 years, whatever it's been. It doesn't have the year on here though. Yeah, it even mentions LV in here, so it came out maybe after. And he's still friends with the guys from Menomana because he mentioned them in here. But yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, I really want to find out what he's been doing the last few years. If he's still doing music. He could probably get a job at, like a tech company or something like that and do well for himself. But, he's an artist, Brentnoff, and he's very talented. I mean, just from the track lists, People of Gardarines, Which Side Are You On, In the Wake. I mean, some of these songs sound sort of familiar, but I just remember it, it was more stripped down, more kind of ballady at points, and there weren't as many sort of energetic hooks or experiments that I remembered when I gave it. The year it came out, which I'm still thinking it was 2018. It didn't end up in the top 10 of my top 10 records for whatever reason, but still, I love Brentnoff. I'm a fan of his. I'll be listening to whatever he does. So, I mean, although Ilvi I haven't, so it's not quite accurate. Anything he does as a primary musician, I know he produced some bands too. There's one band I remember got an email for, and I bought the album, but I wasn't into it. Anyway, moving on. So next in the R's, there's the band that wasn't originally, but then Casey Crescenzo of the Deer Hunter joined and then left. They only have 2 albums. Their history is a little bit like Jellyfish or like Apes and Androids. The Receiving End of Sirens from Massachusetts. So their debut album, which the artwork, of course, on the original album from 2005, Between the Heart and the Synapse, looks different. But this is the re-release. I know a version came out with that original artwork, and I would like to get it, actually. I did have at least a couple of members. Was it Brendan Brown? I'm not sure who signed it there. Was it Casey? It might have been Casey. But yeah, this is a landmark record to me. Fantastic album. The hooks are over the top. I talked about this in a Receiving End of Sirens video that some people found recently. I don't know why. That was over 2 years ago. But thank you for finding that video and commenting. This Armistice is my go-to if I'm choosing one track on here. But it's like Queen and like Sabotage. The way they use the vocal lines and just the hooks. The energy is off the charts. There's some hardcore screaming, but it doesn't matter. The riff, the guitar textures, the concept, it just comes at you left and right and left and right. It never stops. It's like relentless, this album. And you go back to it. If I ever was having a bad day or I just was tired and needed some energy, I would pop this sucker in. So yeah, this is an all-time favorite of mine, Between the Heart and the Synapse. So they followed it up. That was 2005. This is 2007's The Earth Sings Me on Me, which Casey Crescenzo had left the band to pursue the Deer Hunter full-time. But this album is still really good. It's more space rocky, it's got more kind of epicness in some ways that it's sort of, kind of swirling. The looping that goes on is taken to another level in some ways. Brendan Brown does, and Alex Barr, especially Brendan Brown, does the primary amount of the majority of the vocals. But The Crop in the Past, Pale Blue Dot, that's a favorite among people. It's kind of a closing piece almost in some ways. Smoke and Mirrors was the opening single. I mean, is it prog? I mean, it's art rock, yeah. In some ways, it's post-hardcore. In some ways, it's a mixture. It's like space rock goes, Warped Tour in some ways. I don't even know if that's the best way. I know they were listening to Radiohead and the members of the band. I mean, they were just all talented musicians, but time and circumstances kind of the writing was on the wall for, because it wasn't meant to be. Even though they did a lot of touring, they had success. They just had more priorities. They had families to feed and normal day jobs to go on to. Unfortunately, after about 4 or 5 years, but. Trios or the Receiving End of Sirens are a special band for me and many others. We love the Deer Hunter, but there's a unique spot in the sort of lexicon of my taste and many tastes of the last 20 years for this band. And this album is among their best work. Most people would probably lean toward, unless they're like who hate screaming, Between the Heart and the Synapse, but it's just, both of the records are great. So, okay, I only have one record from this band, which I'm getting a DVD from them soon. This is the Red Paintings. Their only album, their only proper album. They had like a live album and a bunch of EPs. The band from Down Under, Trash Thompson? I forget his last name. Trash McSweeney, rather. It's art rock, orchestral rock, This album came out in 2013. It's called The Revolution Is Never Coming. He worked on it for ages. Supposedly there's another album coming at some point, but there's a lot of, Wasp. There's a lot of songs I like. Walls, Wasp, The Falls of Rome. It's kind of post-apocalyptic or dreary and lyrically in some ways. It's like, the world's ending, you better just kind of try to do the best you can and let's just kind of go after people because the world's going to be over anyways. The Revolution Is Never Coming. The title track is the last track on here, but very political and social political in lyrics. But the music is so good at times. I saw them live a couple times. They had like people in, these body paint, and they did paintings and all this. The red paintings, go figure the name. But the only thing I have issues with is the production at times. It's a little bit like the Bedlam and Goliath. The cymbals clip at times. That it was my album of the year in 2013. It's not anywhere near. I haven't gone back to it, but I probably should. I'm curious on what they're gonna do. As far as this album they've been working on for many years, if it's ever gonna come out, but. Yeah, the Red Paintings, The Revolution Is Never Coming for 2013. So then, moving on, I have 2 records from this band, one of my other favorites. And I actually have another copy of one of their records because this sucker got a little damaged. This is The Reign of Kindo, Rhythm, chord, and melody. I've talked about it many other times in many other videos, but it's filled with excellent tracks, jazz, rock, pop, progressive, dynamics. Every song takes you on an adventure. My favorite track is Till We Make Our Ascent, but I hear that music play, hold out. The drum work is just out of this world. It's just jazz drumming, really. Moments in between. Breathe Again is kind of suspect lyrically, but the music is fantastic. Love the use of like Harmon mute and trumpet and Let It Go. Nice to Meet You. Every song on this is just, the energy is great. I mean, that album does have a little clipping on the cymbals, but I've gotten past it. Kind of like on the debut album from Receiving End of Sirens, actually. So then the other record I have, that was from 2008, Rhythm, Chord, and Melody, which I've got, again, I've got another copy right here, which I haven't opened because the condition of that. So that might be one that's going in the contest as well, but the 2018 album, which came out after many years of, or a few years of releasing songs, through the Patreon, Happy However After. My go-tos on this, City of Gods, which is like the most proggy song probably, Smell of a Rose, Human Convention, Catch the Gleam, Return to Me is great, and About Love. If I chose my favorite track on here, it'd probably be About Love. The only thing about it is I associate this with my flash drive, and it frequently would come on automatically when it got reset. So I listened to, like, Human Convention. I heard that intro probably 250 times in the span of about a year and a half. I almost got tired of it, but anyway. This is, Happy Hour After from The Reign of Kindo from 2018, or Kindo. They're calling themselves Kindo for that, but. So here's the last, I think it's the last part of this video, but it's a big part. It's a pretty big collection I have of the great, progressive folk orchestral rock band from England, Renaissance. So, alright, so I've been a fan since the, mid to late 90s. First time when I heard Annie Haslam cover the 2 songs on the Genesis, Ripples, and Yes tribute albums, Turn of the Century, She's an Angel. But, of course, this is their debut album, I think? Yeah, which came out on the ashes of the Yardbirds in, 69 or 70. This doesn't have Annie Haslam. This has... The singer was Jane Ralph, and her her brother, I think, is Keith Relf, also did some singing, but you know, I haven't listened to the early Renaissance that much. A few times here and there, but it's more blues based. With, you know, they were going in the orchestral direction, but they hadn't at that point. That was like 70. Then I have, this is Illusion, which came out I think the next year. Again, Annie wasn't with the band. It was still Jane, Keith Relf, Jim McCarty. I think Keith Relf and Jim McCarty were from the Yardbirds, but and again, another one where they weren't quite there. They were going there. I mean, but I don't know if you would really call it prog at this point. A little bit like Jethro Tull, their history. But yeah, this is Illusion, from like the year after, like 70 or 71. Looking for the year. This is a Areola Vettrieb pressing, West German, printed in West German. So, in West Germany rather. So, anyway, so now getting into the chunk. I have 2 copies, which I don't know if I intended to have 2 copies, so that one of these may be one I may want to also give away, of Ashes Are Burning. So I don't have Prologue. I'm still missing that album. I think I've seen it before, which is the first album with Annie Haslam, but and a few other members like Michael Dunford, the classic lineup. But anyway, one of these is, I don't know, it's like these pressings. One of these is there's a slight difference in the colors you can see, but neither of them are new pressings. This is from Sovereign. This one's a Capitol issue. This doesn't. Yeah, I get this is Sovereign also, but oh, this is an import. I didn't even look at that. So this is maybe that's why I bought it, because it was a Japanese import. But the title track and Carpet of the Sun are probably my go-tos on here. Ashes Are Burning. There's one other song, Let It Grow. Can You Understand? See, when I first got into Renaissance, like a lot of bands like Rush and Zeppelin I didn't do that with, but Rush, I bought the compilations, and so I knew the songs from the compilations, and those are the songs that were on the compilations. But On the Frontier is great, At the Harbor. It's a terrific album. I know why people consider this their best album. I think it's 73. Yep, 73, anyway. MCA Records and Capitol, but again, this other pressing, this Japanese one, doesn't have as much info. It was a 73 or later pressing, anyway. So, and I've stated it before, I'll say it again, Annie Haslam is my favorite female singer of all time. I love a lot of other singers, but she has that, 4 or 5 octave range, and she's angelic. Stuff with Renaissance primarily. I have some of her soul music I like as well, but... So here's Turn the Cards. I think this was 74. Yep. And the go-tos on here are Running Hard, Black Flame, and Mother Russia. Mother Russia is 9 minutes. Running Hard's like 9:37. But Renaissance is interesting. I've always compared their history to Zeppelin. This is when we start from when Annie joined, including Prologue, I suppose, because Prologue, the track, I know pretty well, and that every record is consistently good. I don't find songs I want to skip. Gold is Being. It's Gold is Being or Cold is Being. I Think of You is great. Things I Don't Understand. That's a 9.5-minute song itself. So this is a U.S. pressing. But anyway, I don't know if it was the first pressing. It might be later. Anyway, Turn to the Cards. So then like Physical Graffiti, I consider this my favorite, and their sort of masterpiece, but again, splitting hairs with their catalog. The Scheherazade, songs from Scheherazade. I have actually a digital mobile, like one of the original master digital mobile records I found for a reasonable price. I remember these are always really expensive, and I found it, I think it was half off at Half Price Books. I maybe paid $25 for it. It was maybe 50, or maybe it was like 30%. I know I didn't pay an arm or leg for it. It was great to get one. But this, and especially for this record, A Trip to the Fair is still probably, push comes to shove, my favorite Renaissance track. I have a lot of nostalgia for being a kid listening to that song, even though it's kind of creepy the way what happens sort of in the lyrics, where it's like everyone's laughing at them. But then the title track, that's sweet. It's like whatever is 20, 25 minutes. It's fantastic. It doesn't have a dead moment on it. Ocean Gypsy is also great. The Vulture's High is good too. I mean, this is again in the albums of the 70s and Prague albums. See, this is a Japanese import. Interesting. So I got unfortunately it has the person's name on it, but I paid 20 whatever. So I have a Japanese and I don't have a standard copy. I have a Japanese and I have a digital mobile version of my favorite Renaissance album. And most people consider the best album from 70. I think it was 76. It was 75 or 76. It was 70. I'm pretty sure this came. I mean, I should know my history better. It was 75. Okay. damage this stuff, so I'm going to move this over here, but just to try to wrap this up and get through the rest of this. So here's my copy of the live album. This is 76, live at Carnegie Hall, which they did all of, they did all of Scheherazade. That's on side C, the second disc on the first side on that. But it has Prologue, Ocean Gypsy, Can You Understand, Carpet of the Sun, Ashes Are Burning, the title track. It doesn't have A Trip to the Fair. It's about the only... And it's a 23-minute version of Ashes Are Burning. So they jammed a lot on this. Oh, this is in my top 10 live albums. In fact, I should always think of this when I think of favorite live albums. This is definitely up there. Because the songs take on somewhat of a new life. They have an orchestra, I believe. And this is at Carnegie freaking Hall. I mean, how more prestigious can you get? So the band that was doing sort of classical music merging with... Like, their biggest inspiration were Scheherazade and... what's the other one? Russian composer. I'm blanking. I'll remember it later. I'll probably put it in the description. But anyway, so then they had Novella, which came out in 77. I know there's two different covers for this. I think this may be the U.S. cover. The other cover's better, but I think the CD has the other cover. But it has Can You Hear Me, the Midas Man, and then Touching Once is So Hard to Keep. That's the 9-minute track. I mean, their albums weren't long. They were prog. I mean, Can You Hear Me is almost 14 minutes long, so... They're a band that would put out like 5, 6, 7 tracks on an album, but they would be long tracks. But Novella is among that whole series, starting with Prologue, still they were consistent. So this is what I consider the final of it. It's like a 5-album run or 6-album run. Song for All Seasons, which the title track is a favorite of mine. When I got that second compilation, Tales of 1001 Nights, that was the one I was like blown away by the most. The title track. I love it. They're talking about the different seasons, of course, Song for All Seasons. I forget there's one other really good track on here that I think of it for, but this is actually a promo, interest in my version, but this was 78 Song for All Seasons. I'm trying to, I mean, part of the problem is the way the artwork looks, because I think this is the one that has their most commercial pop hit, which I'm, Northern Lights. I'm looking here, I'm not seeing it on the track list, though. But yes, it is. God, you cannot read. I have to pull it out. It is on here. Northern Lights is probably the most accessible track that Renaissance ever did. It should have been maybe a bigger pop. It was like as big as Follow You, Follow Me by Genesis, or even not even quite that big. But anyway, that was 78. You know, you can see them. You know, late 70s, sort of loving the seasons. You know, and they were there. You know, getting in their late 20s, early 30s, the band. So I have one other record from Renaissance on vinyl, and it's one from the 80s, 83. It's called Timeline, and this is a promo also. I've listened to it. I'm not sure if this is the one. They have one record, maybe the one before it. I have Azure, but I don't have that on vinyl. I've seen that, and I didn't buy that. But they did a little bit of punk, some punk elements or new wave, and you know... It's not a record that I would go back to regularly, but as a fan of the band and just, you know, loyalty, I like to have it, I suppose. I don't know. I guess if I never end up listening to it, you know, I may want to just part ways with it. But I didn't spend an arm and a leg. Well, $5.30. I don't know if that was even the price I paid for it, but because it's creased a little bit on the side there. But anyway, timeline, you know, and I know that it was just Dunford, John Camp. See, eventually the classic lineup had John Camp and John Tout. They went on the original lineup. I think by the third or fourth record, the entire original lineup was gone. But Michael Dunford, the core was Michael Dunford and Annie. But John Camp was the bass guitarist, was on many of these records up through the 80s. So anyway, that's it for my Renaissance collection in the first part of the R's. Again, thank you for subscribing recently if you've subscribed, but please subscribe if you have not subscribed, and we'll see you next time.